My beloved, chosen souls, I need you to take a deep breath with me right now, because what we're about to explore isn't just another comforting message or an ordinary encouragement. This is a sacred revelation for those who are truly ready. Nobody ever truly warns you how strange it gets as you approach the final stages of your awakening. Everyone talks about enlightenment like it's a radiant sunrise, a moment of blissful, floating above your problems, glowing with divine perfection. But the truth, the final awakening, doesn't look like bliss. It doesn't feel like peace. It certainly doesn't match the spiritual fairy tale you might have envisioned. Instead, it feels like your entire inner system is pulling you somewhere you cannot describe, not forward, not upward, but inward, into a deep, uncharted territory beyond language and beyond logic. You don't glow in this stage. You don't levitate above daily struggles. You disconnect from roles, from identities, from narratives, from everything you once believed you were supposed to become. This isn't depression. This isn't confusion. This is the quiet, holy death of who you thought you were. It is the final shedding of illusions. It is the sacred collapse before the ultimate rebirth. But here's the challenge. No one around you will understand. The people closest to you might say, "You're acting strange," or "You've changed," or even, "You're losing yourself." Why? Because these signs don't make sense to the logical mind. They're subtle, odd, often dismissed as nothing. Yet, if these signs are appearing in your life, your soul is announcing loudly, though perhaps in a language only you can hear, that you've reached the threshold. You're not just starting a new chapter. You're completing an entire divine cycle. These 8 strange signs we're going to explore today are not symptoms of breakdown, though they may feel unsettling. They're not failures. They're not spiritual regression. They are sacred indicators that your internal construction is finishing. The old scaffolding is coming down because the eternal architecture is finally ready to stand on its own. And if even one of these signs has quietly shown up in your life, that subtle sense of neutrality, the odd disconnection from things you once loved, the unexplainable inner quiet, know this: you are not falling apart. You are breaking through. Before we dive in, I want to pause and say thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who has supported this sacred work through Super Thanks. Your love and generosity help me continue sharing these messages with depth and authenticity. And please know, whether you choose to donate or not, you are deeply cherished. Your presence here, your spirit, and your silent prayers are already more than enough. If your spirit feels this message stirring something deep inside, please comment 888 below to confirm and declare that you're ready to fully embrace this final transformation. Let heaven and earth witness your agreement. Get comfortable, open your heart, and prepare to recognize the signs. You were never warned about the signs that mark you as chosen, as one who is not merely awakening, but completing. Let's begin this sacred unveiling together. God's chosen ones. 8 strange signs. You're entering your final awakening stage. For so long, chosen one, your inner voice has been your faithful guide, that quiet compass pointing you toward truth, even when the world roared with distractions. You leaned on it when you had no one else to lean on, trusting its gentle nudges when friends betrayed you, family misunderstood you, and society tried to mold you into something you were never meant to be. That voice saved you countless times, didn't it? Remember the moments when you walked away from relationships that everyone else thought were perfect, or jobs that looked stable but felt suffocating. You knew, deep down, that your inner voice was more reliable than any external advice. But now, something strange is happening, and it feels like an uncharted territory. That once familiar voice, the one you refined through pain and patience, has either vanished or become so faint and alien that you wonder if it was ever yours to begin with. Have you asked yourself why this is happening now? Could it be that God is preparing you to hear Him in ways beyond human language? In this final awakening, you don't just lose the voice, you lose the entire structure it used to echo through. You begin to feel disconnected from your own identity. And while this might sound terrifying to the world, to you, the chosen one, it's a sacred unraveling. It's not a clinical dissociation or a mental breakdown. It's the collapse of all the constructs you used to define yourself. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. What if I told you that the old you needed to die so that the eternal you could finally emerge? Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." This isn't just about silence in your environment. It's about the stillness that happens when every false layer of self falls away, and all that's left is divine presence. As you stand in this unfamiliar inner space, you start to realize something profound. That intuition you trusted was indeed real, but it was also entangled with your childhood wounds, with ancestral fears, and with the collective trauma of generations. You see, your intuition carried your name, but it also carried your scars. It was a blend of pure divine knowing and survival mechanisms. You learned to navigate a broken world. Think about it. Have you ever made a decision thinking it was your soul speaking, only to realize later it was fear disguised as wisdom? How many times have you mistaken emotional reflexes for divine guidance? Even the great Martin Luther King Jr. faced this conflict when he had to differentiate between his fear for his family and his divine calling to lead a movement. It wasn't his voice that mattered, it was God's voice moving through his surrendered soul. In this stage, the chosen one realizes they are no longer living from the surface self, the self obsessed with achievements, validation, or the desperate need to be understood. You start operating from a place so deep that it cannot be reduced to words. It is beneath thought, beneath emotion, beneath language itself. It is the realm of pure presence. And presence doesn't need to shout to be known. It simply is. Just as the ocean doesn't need to announce its depth, your new essence radiates without explanation. John 10:27 reminds us, "My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me." In this moment, you begin to understand that the true voice of God is not always heard in words, but in movements of the soul, shifts of energy, and waves of knowing that surpass the intellect. Reflect on the life of Nelson Mandela, who after 27 years in prison emerged not with a bitter voice of vengeance, but with a silent presence that transformed a nation. How did he do that? He let go of the inner chatter, the recycled thoughts of revenge and ego, and allowed something greater to guide him, a presence that could not be confined to words or slogans. And so it is with you, chosen one. You are being invited to that same level of transcendence, where you no longer need to announce your growth or prove your enlightenment. You simply embody it. This silent presence within you starts to move in ways you never imagined. You find yourself leaving rooms quietly rather than arguing. You notice yourself forgiving before apologies come. You feel peace where chaos once dictated your every reaction. Can you feel it now? The shift from reactive living to conscious being. This is the mark of those stepping into their final awakening, a phase where external confirmations become irrelevant because you are now rooted in eternal presence. Isaías 30, 21 declares, whether you turn to the right or to the left, your ears will hear a voice behind you, saying, "This is the way, walk in it." Yet now, this guidance feels less like a voice and more like a movement through your very bones. Consider Mother Teresa, who described moments of spiritual dryness where she could no longer hear God in the ways she used to. People called it a crisis of faith, but it was actually a divine invitation into a deeper union beyond words. She continued her mission despite the silence, because her connection was no longer dependent on emotional reassurance, but on unwavering presence. In your journey, chosen one, are you willing to walk forward even when the comforting whispers disappear? Are you willing to trust the movement more than the message? Another powerful example is the life of Steve Jobs, who spoke often about trusting something deeper than reason, a gut that was not really his gut, but a deeper force orchestrating his path. When he dropped out of college and took seemingly random classes, he followed a subtle movement rather than a clear plan. Later, he realized those very movements created the typography that defined Apple's aesthetic. Imagine if he had ignored that movement because it didn't sound logical or clear. You see, chosen one, your final awakening is not about gaining more spiritual knowledge or stacking up mystical experiences. It's about shedding every layer that prevents you from merging completely with God's will. You begin to see that the ultimate wisdom is not something you can articulate in a workshop or package into a 10-step program. It is something you can only live. James 1-5 says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him." But in this stage, you realize that even the asking dissolves, and all that remains is receiving through pure being. Reflect on Oprah Winfrey's journey from a young woman shaped by trauma and a desperate need to be seen, to a global force whose very presence radiates healing and authenticity. She didn't arrive there by amplifying her inner voice louder. She arrived by surrendering it, allowing her presence to speak more than any words could. So now, can you sit in this holy quietness without rushing to fill it with affirmations or spiritual jargon? Can you let go of the need to decode every sign, every symbol, every subtle feeling? Can you trust that God is doing a deeper work that transcends all human language? You are no longer guided by a voice that sounds like your past self. You are now moved by an unnameable force that flows from eternity into your every breath. This is the sacred silence of the final awakening. You are not losing yourself. You are finally returning to the true self that was hidden beneath all your stories, pains, and triumphs. The you that was in God before the foundations of the world. In this space, words become too small, and only your presence remains a living testament that you have crossed into a realm beyond voice, beyond thought, beyond fear. And that is the ultimate sign that you, chosen one, are entering your final awakening stage. Chosen one, have you noticed how lately your decisions seem to arise from nowhere, swift, silent, and strangely certain? You don't sit there debating, writing lists of pros and cons, or asking 1,000 friends for advice like you might have in the past. You don't need to analyze every detail or dissect every possible outcome. Instead, you act in immediate, seamless alignment, as if something beyond your mind has already chosen for you. And then, almost miraculously, You look back and realize that what you did was precisely what needed to happen, often with an accuracy that baffles even you. Have you stopped to ask yourself why? What if this shift is proof that you're no longer merely human reacting to life, but rather a divine vessel moving in harmony with God's perfect will? It's not that you're ignoring logic or wisdom, no. This is something far deeper. You've stepped into a frequency where you are no longer a student, constantly looking for signs and confirmations. You have become the sign. You embody the message. You radiate the evidence. Think of Jesus himself in John 14:6, when he said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." He wasn't just delivering information, he embodied the very path. In this final awakening stage, you start to sense that you are no longer separate from the guidance you once needed so desperately. You are the living proof of alignment, a walking testament that divine purpose does not need external validation. At first, this sudden absence of inner dialogue can feel unsettling, almost like you've lost an old friend. Where is that chatter that kept you company? Where did the endless questions go? But chosen one, can you imagine how much energy you've wasted on second-guessing, overthinking, and replaying possible failures in your mind? When that inner noise falls silent, it's not a loss, it's a liberation. You might feel naked without it at first, but slowly, you begin to recognize that the very thing you thought was guiding you was sometimes only slowing you down. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct your paths." You no longer lean on limited understanding because your entire being has become a direct channel for God's movements. Think of the life of Bruce Lee, who taught that true mastery comes when action flows without conscious thought. Be water, my friend, he said. His legendary fighting style wasn't built on constant calculation in the moment, but on a body and mind so deeply trained and aligned that the movement became pure instinct. Similarly, you are entering a space where your soul has been so refined that it moves before the mind even has a chance to interpret. You become like water, adaptable, unstoppable, and flowing exactly where you're meant to go. Consider how Oprah Winfrey, in her early years, constantly battled internal noise, insecurities, doubts, societal expectations. Yet, as she matured spiritually, she began to make massive decisions intuitively. She left her successful talk show, invested in OWN, and took risks that seemed insane on paper, but felt right in her spirit. These choices transformed her legacy. She wasn't just following a path, she became the path. Can you feel that happening inside of you? Chosen one, are you beginning to sense that your mere existence is now a message to the world? When you realize you are no longer following signs, but are the sign, it changes everything. You stop searching for prophetic words in every corner because your life itself becomes a prophecy fulfilled. You stop asking for external confirmation because your entire presence confirms your divine alignment. You're no longer desperate for instructions because you realize you are the instruction God sent into the world. Isaiah 60:1 commands, "Arise, shine, for your light has come, and the glory of the Lord rises upon you." That glory isn't merely an external glow, it's a radiance from within that moves without permission or explanation. Look at Malala Yousafzai, who stood for education in the face of terror without long deliberations or strategizing every small move. She didn't wait for someone to approve her courage. She simply acted. She became the sign of hope and defiance for millions. Her life wasn't about carefully constructed plans. It was about embodying a truth so profound that it moved nations. That is the space you are entering, a realm where action is not separate from spirit, but is spirit in motion. Or take Elon Musk, who often makes bold moves that leave analysts scratching their heads. He invests in novates and speaks in ways that seem reckless to the rational mind, but are aligned to a vision so deeply rooted in his being that it transcends traditional logic. He embodies the principle of moving before thinking, acting before explaining. Similarly, you, chosen one, are stepping into a divine boldness that doesn't need to be justified. Can you imagine how unstoppable you become when you no longer seek permission from your old self? As this transformation deepens, you find that the need for inner narration fades away. You no longer feel compelled to explain to yourself or to others why you're doing what you're doing. There's nothing to justify when every move is guided by an invisible, unstoppable force. You stop needing to narrate every step because you finally realize there is a higher intelligence at work. Ephesians 2:10 reveals, "For we are God's masterpiece. He has created us anew in Christ Jesus, so we can do the good things He planned for us long ago." You see, those good things aren't planned by your mind. They are embodied through your surrendered existence. So, chosen one, can you feel this shift inside you? Can you embrace this new dimension where hesitation has no place, and your very being is the evidence of God's orchestration? Can you trust this divine flow, even when it makes no sense to those around you? You are no longer the seeker, you are the revelation. You no longer need to find your purpose because you are living proof of divine intention. In this sacred stage, you don't just follow divine instructions, you are the divine instruction in motion. This is the mystery and the miracle of your final awakening. You are no longer moved by voices or visions, but by pure presence. You have become the embodiment of divine will on earth. An unspoken sermon, a living scroll, an untamed light. And as you walk this path, you will notice the world reacting to you differently, because you are not just another person trying to figure life out. You are a walking sign that God's wisdom lives and breathes within human form. The chosen one has transcended thought and entered pure knowing. The chosen one has become the sign, chosen one. Have you felt that strange, almost haunting moment when you sit alone in your room, surrounded by the very objects that once defined your comfort and joy? You see that old lamp you carefully picked out years ago, a photograph that used to ignite a warm smile, or perhaps that favorite sweater draped across the chair, the one that used to feel like a soft embrace on heavy days. Yet now, none of it feels quite right. It's as if someone sneaked into your life and subtly rearranged the energy behind your cherished items while you weren't looking. You look at these things and, logically, they are still yours. But in your soul, they seem distant, hollow, like echoes of a self you can no longer reach. Have you stopped to ask why? Could it be that God is calling you to detach from all the old energetic anchors because He's preparing you to inhabit a higher spiritual frequency? This is one of the most silently unsettling signs of your final awakening. Your emotional ties to the physical world begin to unravel quietly, almost imperceptibly. You're not experiencing sudden disgust or dislike for these objects. Instead, you feel an emptiness, a void where once there was comfort. Why? Because the energetic significance those objects carried has been deactivated. They no longer serve as mirrors for your identity. You realize that for years, your sense of self was subtly anchored to these surroundings. That mug wasn't just a mug, it was a morning ritual that shaped your emotional landscape. That book wasn't just words, it was a belief system that gave you meaning. That wall color wasn't just aesthetic, it set the mood for your life story. But in this stage, your inner energetic structure evolves so swiftly that all external scaffolding must collapse. Can you feel the old you fading? Chosen one? Think of Abraham in Genesis 12:1, when God told him, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you." He had to leave everything familiar behind. Even the emotional and cultural anchors that defined him, likewise. You are being asked to move beyond even the most sentimental corners of your life. You might find yourself wandering through your home, feeling like a guest, unable to connect to the things that once grounded you. You may pick up that cherished item and feel nothing, no warmth, no nostalgia. Just a ghostly echo of what it used to mean. Can you imagine the courage it takes to keep moving forward without clinging to these emotional artifacts? Take Steve Jobs as an example. He was known for his almost ruthless ability to strip away anything unnecessary, not just in design, but in life. He simplified his wardrobe, his spaces, his processes, because he understood that clutter in the outer world often reflected confusion in the inner world. This wasn't minimalism for aesthetic's sake. It was a deep, energetic shedding to keep his focus sharp and his spirit free. Are you ready to let go like that? Chosen one. To release every old attachment without a ceremony, trusting that the emptiness is a sacred invitation rather than a loss. And consider Marie Kondo, who sparked a global movement with the simple question, does it spark joy? But beyond the viral folding techniques, the deeper essence of her philosophy was about energetically confronting what no longer aligns with who you are becoming. When you hold something and feel no spark, it's not just a sign to discard an item, it's a profound spiritual checkpoint revealing that you have changed at your core. Could it be that your final awakening is demanding an even deeper discernment than you ever thought possible? This process might even stir quiet grief, not because the objects themselves are bad or cursed, but because they represent emotional versions of you that are now dying. You are grieving parts of yourself that found comfort in these things, parts of you that relied on them as emotional crutches. That favorite sweater may remind you of nights when you felt unseen, and now you no longer resonate with that story. That photo might capture a smile from a time when you were performing rather than truly living. The grief is not about the item, it's about the gentle funeral for an identity that no longer serves your divine expansion. Ephésiens 4:22 tells you, you were taught, with regard to your former way of life, to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires. This is not a mere suggestion, it is a divine necessity for your final awakening. Think of Eckhart Tolle, who described sitting on a park bench for hours, feeling detached from everything he once identified with, even his thoughts and emotions. That detachment wasn't depression, it was the birth of presence. He had to let go of every external definition to discover the deeper I am within. Similarly, chosen one, can you sit with the discomfort of losing emotional ties to your objects without rushing to replace them? Can you hold the emptiness long enough to discover the fullness waiting on the other side? Imagine the life of Malala Yousafzai, who had to leave behind not just physical objects, but an entire sense of home and familiarity after being attacked. Her journey of awakening pushed her to embrace an identity far beyond what her room, her books, or her cherished local customs could ever offer. She stepped into a new life that was about purpose rather than comfort. Are you willing to step into your purpose, even if it means letting go of the comforting symbols of your past? This is not about minimalism for the sake of trend or aesthetics. This is not about reducing clutter to feel lighter for a few days. This is about energetic shedding, a sacred purging of anything that binds you to old emotional patterns. It's about releasing attachments that no longer align with the frequency God is calling you to inhabit. Philippiens 3:13, 14 Forgetting what is behind and straining toward what is ahead. I press on toward the goal, to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. You are not discarding objects, you are discarding identities, stories, and frequencies that have run their course. So, chosen one, I ask you, are you willing to live in a space that feels foreign until your spirit fully inhabits its new vibration? Can you allow the grief of letting go to wash over you without rushing to find the next emotional anchor? Can you trust that what feels like emptiness now is actually sacred preparation for divine fullness? Your room, your favorite things, your old rituals, they all played their role beautifully. But now, you are no longer that version of you who needed them to feel safe or whole. You are becoming a vessel so pure and transparent that only God's presence fills the space where old stories once lived. In this holy season of final awakening, you are being called to walk through your home, your memories, your attachments. As a witness rather than a participant, you observe, you honor, you release. There is no need to announce this to the world or create dramatic goodbyes. The transformation is quiet, subtle, and deeply sacred. It is an intimate dance between your soul and God, a private shedding that will ultimately reveal a new you, a you that no longer depends on external forms to remember who you are. In that silence, in that emptiness, you will find the presence that words cannot hold, and you will finally understand that everything external was only ever a mirror for the inner work now complete. Chosen one, have you ever felt an inexplicable urge to let go of everything you once thought you needed? Maybe lately you've been compelled to donate half your belongings, clear out drawers that have held memories for years, or strip your space down to almost nothing. And perhaps you've felt a tightness in your chest when surrounded by sentimental items, as if they were slowly suffocating you rather than comforting you. You might wonder, why is this happening to me now? Why does my spirit crave emptiness? This is not a random phase or a trendy minimalist urge. This is sacred. It is your soul decluttering your emotional landscape, severing false ties to form, so that you can finally stand in the purity of your being. When your spirit no longer needs physical anchors to remember who it is, you step into a freedom so rare that most people can only imagine it. It often starts so subtly that you almost miss it. You walk past a mirror, something you've done thousands of times without thinking, and for the first time, you avert your eyes. You don't do it because you feel ugly or insecure. You don't do it out of vanity. Instead, something inside you feels a quiet unease. You sense that the reflection staring back at you is both deeply familiar and profoundly foreign, like an old costume you once wore to play a role you no longer resonate with. Have you paused to ask, who is this face I've been calling me? What if that reflection is not your true self, but simply the shell that carried you through different stories and battles? This is one of the eeriest and most mystical signs that you're entering your final awakening stage. When your relationship with your reflection starts to dissolve, the mirror itself transforms from a place of self-confirmation into a portal of deep spiritual confrontation. It is no longer a tool to fix your hair or adjust your posture. It becomes a silent witness to the death of an identity. You may find yourself stopping eye contact with your reflection altogether, or you might gaze so deeply that you feel as if you're looking straight through yourself into an endless, unnameable space. The face, the gestures, the tiny expressions they no longer hold, the emotional charge they once did. You look into your eyes and see not a story, but an expansive, sacred emptiness. This process echoes the wisdom of 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come, the old has gone. The new is here, the old self that clung to appearances is fading. You're not rejecting your humanity, you're transcending it. You're becoming the observer so completely that the image in the mirror loses its authority over your identity. Imagine how unsettling yet liberating that is, to realize that the face you've identified with your whole life is not who you are, but merely a garment your soul chose to wear for this earthly experience. Consider the journey of David Bowie, a master of constantly reinventing his external image. At the height of his fame, he said he felt detached from all the personas he created. He understood that his outer form was just a canvas for a deeper, more fluid self-expression. In the same way, chosen one, you are learning that the true you is not confined to a face or a style. You are an eternal spirit, experiencing life through a temporary vessel. Or look at the story of mystic Teresa of Avila, who described moments when she felt so absorbed in divine presence that she no longer recognized herself in the mirror. She would say her body felt like an exterior shell, something she honored but did not live inside of. Imagine reaching a level of spiritual maturity where your awareness is so vast that your physical features no longer define you. Can you feel the magnitude of this revelation? When your spiritual identity begins to overpower the physical one, it can feel deeply disorienting. Society has trained you since childhood to build your entire sense of worth from external appearance. From magazines to social media, everything conditions you to believe that your face is your value. Your body is your currency. But as you awaken, your body stops being your home. Your true home becomes your awareness, an infinite, unchanging consciousness that cannot be summarized by cheekbones, skin tone, or eye shape. In this liminal stage, the mirror no longer shows you. It shows the last remnants of who you thought you were, a version in its final season of existence. Philippians 3:20 reminds us. But our citizenship is in heaven, and we eagerly await a Savior from there, the Lord Jesus Christ. In this stage, you begin to embody this verse, understanding that your earthly identity was always meant to be temporary, a vehicle, not the destination. You are learning to navigate the world not from the vantage point of form, but from the deep, eternal seat of spirit. Take, for example, Keanu Reeves, who is often described as someone whose presence feels strangely detached from the glitz of Hollywood. He once said that he feels his identity is not attached to the roles he plays or even to his public image, but rooted in something beyond words. This quality makes him seem both present and absent at the same time, embodying a kind of spiritual detachment that few can comprehend. Can you see how freeing it becomes when the world's projections no longer stick to you? This phase will eventually soften over time. You will learn to see your body not as a prison, but as an instrument, a sacred harp through which God's breath creates symphonies. You will begin to embrace your form without becoming trapped in it. You will respect the face in the mirror as a divine tool rather than an unchangeable definition. But during this transitional phase, it is perfectly normal to feel unsettled. You are not avoiding your reflection because you hate yourself. You are outgrowing the story it represents. There is no need to rush this stage or force yourself to feel normal again. This is a holy unraveling designed to bring you into deeper alignment with your eternal nature. Isaiah 43. 18, 19, urgis as. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. See, I am doing a new thing. You are indeed becoming a new creation, not just spiritually, but energetically. And even your face cannot hold on to the old narrative anymore. Chosen one. Have you noticed lately that when someone casually asks you your age, you hesitate for a moment, or perhaps when filling out a form, you find yourself pausing, blanking out when trying to remember your birthday, or even what you officially do for a living? You might wonder if your memory is failing, or if you're simply distracted. But deep down, you sense that this is not a lapse in mental function. It's something far more profound. This is one of the most mysterious and liberating signs of your final awakening. Your soul is deliberately erasing access to the old identity file you once clung to so tightly. Have you questioned why this is happening now? Could it be that God is calling you to shed every artificial layer so you can step into the truest version of yourself? In this sacred phase, you are no longer defining yourself by your age, your resume, your education, or even your family name. The biography you worked so hard to craft, the one you proudly displayed like a badge of honor, begins to dissolve. Why? Because your soul has decided it's time to release all the identity clutter that once formed the scaffolding of your self-image. You might catch yourself saying, "I don't know what I do anymore," or even, "I feel like I'm becoming anonymous." And you're right, you are becoming anonymous in the best possible way, not anonymous to the world, but anonymous to the illusions that kept you small. John 3:30 reminds us, "He must become greater, I must become less." In this stage, you are allowing God to become more prominent in your being, while your old egoic attachments fade into the background. Think of Siddhartha Gautama, who left behind his royal status, wealth, and family title to discover what lay beyond human identity. He didn't become confused or lost. He became profoundly clear. His journey wasn't about gathering more knowledge or achievements, but about shedding every label until only pure awareness remained. Similarly, chosen one, you are being invited to let go of the mental construct called me, that carefully curated persona built over years of striving, performing, and surviving. You will still be able to function in the world. You'll still converse, laugh, and work. But there will be an indescribable lightness behind every action. Have you felt that subtle emptiness lately? Almost as if the words you speak are no longer weighed down by performance. You might notice that you don't feel the need to explain your backstory to every new person you meet. You no longer need to define your value by where you went to school, your job title, or your list of accomplishments. In fact, the very idea of self-promotion begins to feel foreign, even absurd. 2 Corinthians 12:9 reminds us, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." In your final awakening, you discover that what once felt like a loss of self is actually the perfect condition for divine power to flow through you. Consider the late Chadwick Boseman. Even at the height of his fame, he carried an almost mystical sense of detachment from the Hollywood identity machine. He rarely discussed his personal life or used his platform to build a self-centered brand. Instead, he allowed his work and his spirit to speak for him. He moved in quiet strength, embodying a presence that transcended titles and accolades. His anonymity within the public sphere was not a weakness, it was a deep spiritual strength. Can you imagine living in that same freedom? Chosen one? Or think of Mother Teresa, who famously said, "I belong to Jesus. He must have the right to use me without consulting me." She had no need to highlight her biography or achievements because her essence spoke louder than any list of credentials. She moved beyond the ego's obsession with being someone and became pure service and presence. Are you ready to be used in such a way that your story becomes secondary to God's story through you? This strange erasure of biographical details doesn't leave you confused. It leaves you clear. You no longer carry the heavy luggage of past definitions, victories, and failures. You become as light as breath itself. You stop needing to tell your story to impress or to seek validation through your history. Psalm 139:14 says, "I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made." But this wonder is not in the surface details of your life. It's in the eternal essence that remains when all those details dissolve. Another modern example is Jim Carrey, who openly talks about no longer relating to the Jim Carrey he once performed as. He describes realizing that his identity was just a role, and beyond that role was something far more authentic and joyful. In interviews, he speaks about how freeing it is to no longer be chained to a persona, to stop performing for acceptance. Can you imagine the peace that comes when the person you thought you had to be disappears, leaving behind only divine awareness, chosen one? This stage might feel disorienting because the world teaches us to accumulate labels like armor student, professional, parent, artist, survivor. But you are being called to an inner nakedness, a rawness that only those deeply rooted in spirit can endure. You are moving from a narrative-driven existence to a presence-driven life. You are not becoming nothing. You are becoming everything God intended you to be before the world told you who you were supposed to become. In this sacred forgetting, your soul is not asking you to abandon responsibility or disconnect from life. Rather, it's inviting you to engage life from a space of profound emptiness and pure potential. You become a vessel emptied of false identity, ready to be filled with divine purpose. The you that remains is untouchable, unoffendable, and unshakable. You will feel like you're walking through life almost anonymously. But paradoxically, you will feel more seen by God than ever before. Chosen one. Imagine yourself sitting alone in your room, no phone buzzing in your hand, no comforting hum of background music, no television muttering in the corner, just pure, raw silence wrapping around you like a heavy blanket. And then, out of nowhere, it hits you, a sudden wave of sadness so deep it feels ancient, or a surge of unexpected joy that makes your chest tighten, or a flood of grief tied to memories you didn't even realize you'd buried. There's no obvious trigger. No immediate cause. It's simply the power of silence, pulling back the curtains on parts of your soul you've kept hidden for years, maybe even since childhood. Have you ever wondered why the silence feels so intense now? Could it be that God is using it as a divine tool to cleanse your heart and prepare you for the next level of your awakening? In this sacred stage, silence transforms into a mirror. For the first time in your life, you can't distract yourself with endless scrolling, social chatter, or busy schedules. You can't numb yourself with external noise. You're left with nothing but your breath, your heartbeat, and the unfiltered essence of who you truly are. The emotional backlog, that sacred archive of old wounds, forgotten dreams, repressed pain, and unspoken truths begins to rise gently but powerfully to the surface. And it doesn't come up as panic attacks or mental breakdowns. No, it emerges as pure, felt truth. Can you see how rare and holy that is? Psalm 46:10 tells us, "Be still and know that I am God." Stillness isn't just physical inactivity. It's the sacred quiet where God can finally show you what has been living in the depths of your spirit all along. In this moment, your soul starts speaking in a language beyond words, a language of pure sensation and emotion. You may find yourself crying uncontrollably in the silence, not because you're weak or broken, but because your soul is finally shedding layers of grief that no longer belong to your new self. Or you might feel an unexpected smile rise, and underneath it, an ancient sorrow begins to unravel, as if joy itself is gently escorting the pain out of your body. Have you asked yourself why it feels so overwhelming? Could it be because, for the first time, you're truly listening without distortion? Look at the life of Nelson Mandela. After 27 years of silence in prison, he emerged, not consumed by bitterness, but filled with an extraordinary depth of grace and forgiveness. He had faced the silence, sat with it, allowed it to cleanse and transform him. This is the power of unfiltered stillness. When you allow silence to become your teacher, it stops being something to escape and becomes a sacred space of transformation. Mother Teresa often spoke of her periods of deep inner silence, where she felt nothing but God's absence and her own unworthiness. Yet she emerged from those silences more radiant and filled with divine love than ever before. Can you imagine what it means to sit with such a raw, honest presence that even God's silence becomes a holy companion? During this phase, you might start avoiding silence, not because it's dull, but because it's honest in a way nothing else is. Silence has no filters, no social masks, no polite deflections. It strips you bare in that raw state. Your breath slows down, your awareness sharpens, and your soul finally gets a chance to speak, not through thoughts or intellectual analysis, but through feelings that pierce straight to the core. You are not being too emotional. You are not weak. You are finally experiencing yourself without the buffer of noise. Ephésiens 4, 22, 24 Jesus. Put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life, and be renewed in the spirit of your minds, in silence. This renewal isn't theoretical, it is deeply embodied. Think of Oprah Winfrey, who frequently retreats into intentional silence to reconnect with her deepest self. She understands that beyond all the accolades and noise, the real transformation happens in those quiet, unseen moments. Silence becomes a portal through which you step out of who you thought you were and into who God designed you to be. Are you ready to face that mirror? Chosen one, are you willing to hear the truths your busyness has been drowning out? Or look at Simone Biles, who took a bold stand for her mental and emotional health by stepping back from the Olympic stage. In doing so, she chose the silent, honest work of healing over the noisy praise of the world. Can you imagine the courage it takes to prioritize inner truth over external glory? During these quiet moments, your body plays a vital role. It holds immense wisdom and knows exactly what you are ready to release. You might feel a sudden heaviness in your chest or a warmth spreading through your belly. Tears may flow without an obvious reason, or you might laugh softly as a wave of relief washes over you. All of this is your soul's way of speaking, the truth it has held on to for years. The body never forces you to process more than you can handle. The rest waits, patient and gentle, until you're strong enough to receive it. Isaiah 30:15 reminds us, in repentance and rest is your salvation. In quietness and trust is your strength. In this final awakening, silence is no longer a void to be filled, but a sanctuary to be entered. It is here that the internal noise, the endless self-criticism, the habitual narratives, the survival-based chatter finally begins to dissolve. What emerges is real emotion, sacred and raw, unexplainably powerful and deeply transformative. So, chosen one, can you sit in this silence without running away? Can you trust that the emotions rising within you are not here to destroy you, but to set you free? Can you see that these moments of unexplainable sadness, unexpected joy, and ancient grief are not signs of regression, but evidence of deep inner resurrection in the quiet? You are not alone. You are in the company of your truest self and the presence of God, who has been waiting patiently for you to hear him beneath all the noise. Chosen one, have you felt that peculiar moment when you're in the middle of a conversation, maybe with a friend you've known for years, a co-worker you respect, or even someone you deeply love, and suddenly, without warning, something inside you quietly drifts away? You're still physically there, nodding, responding, maybe even smiling, but internally, your soul has stepped back. The words start to feel hollow, the laughter feels rehearsed, and even the energy of the moment feels strangely distant. You can't quite put your finger on why it's happening, but deep within, you know it's not about rudeness or apathy. Could it be that God is refining your sensitivity to a point where your spirit only wants to remain in true resonance? In this sacred phase of your final awakening, you are not becoming cold or disconnected. Quite the opposite. You are becoming exquisitely sensitive to energy, vibration, and authenticity. Every word, every tone, every energetic exchange begins to feel like a sacred transaction. Your soul, no longer content with shallow or masked interactions, starts to withdraw from anything that isn't deeply aligned with your evolving frequency. Even small talk, which once felt harmless or even fun, now feels like a betrayal to the sacredness you're cultivating inside. Ephesians 4:29 says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs." You begin to crave this level of purity in every interaction. Think about the life of Maya Angelou. She was known for her deliberate use of words and her intense presence when she spoke. She understood the power of language and refused to entertain empty talk or negativity in her space. She even had a rule that negative words spoken in her home would poison the atmosphere. This wasn't an act of superiority, it was spiritual hygiene. Likewise, chosen one, you are learning that your spirit needs conversations and connections that nourish rather than drain, build rather than fracture. In these moments when you feel yourself zoning out, losing focus, or experiencing an overwhelming urge to exit a conversation, it is not social awkwardness or introversion. It is your body and spirit working together to protect the sacred energy you're now called to steward. Your system has developed an acute resonance awareness, a kind of divine radar that detects even the subtlest inauthenticity or energetic imbalance. You might notice yourself avoiding long phone calls, hesitating to RSVP to social gatherings, or even dreading casual coffee meetups. This isn't antisocial behavior. It's a profound inner recalibration. John 10:27 reminds us, "My sheep hear my voice, I know them, and they follow me." You are learning to hear and follow not just external instructions, but the quiet movements of your inner compass. Look at the example of Keanu Reeves, often described as deeply present yet mysteriously reserved in social spaces. Many have noted his ability to step back energetically, even while sitting in a crowd, His seeming withdrawal is not about avoidance, it's about preserving the purity of his inner sanctuary. He intuitively knows when to engage and when to protect his energy. Can you feel that same call within you? Chosen one, to honor your energy as something sacred and not to be squandered. There is a strange shift that begins to happen during this phase. You start valuing absence more than presence. You begin to understand that silence is not the absence of connection, but the presence of clarity. Silence becomes your sanctuary, your fortress of peace where you meet God without interference. Proverbs 17:27 teaches us, "The one who has knowledge uses words with restraint, and whoever has understanding is even-tempered." You realize that in silence, your soul recalibrates, your mind clears, and your spirit strengthens. Consider the journey of Jim Carrey, who stepped back from public life to reconnect with his essence. He shared that he found more truth and peace in being alone than in endless chatter and performing for crowds. His withdrawal wasn't about rejecting the world, but about choosing clarity over noise, essence over performance. Can you relate to that yearning for sacred solitude? Chosen one, as you move deeper into this awakening, you might feel misunderstood by those around you. Friends may interpret your withdrawal as disinterest. Family members might think you're pulling away, and colleagues may label you aloof. But you are not walking away to escape connection. You are walking away to preserve your divine alignment. You are protecting the new frequency that God is cultivating within you, a frequency that can't coexist with shallow conversations or hidden agendas. You begin to choose depth over familiarity, truth over comfort, and divine resonance over social obligation. This new awareness doesn't mean you stop loving people. On the contrary, your love becomes pure, free from performance and people-pleasing. You love from a distance when necessary. You hold space for others without entangling yourself in their unresolved energy. You speak when moved by truth, not by habit or social pressure. You start to embody the verse, Matthew 5:37. All you need to say is simply yes or no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Your words become fewer but heavier with presence. So, chosen one, I ask you, can you honor this new sensitivity without guilt? Can you trust that your urge to withdraw is not rejection but divine protection? Can you see that each moment of energetic misalignment is an invitation to return to your own sacred center? You are learning to be guided, not by social expectation, but by spiritual resonance. And in doing so, you become a living sanctuary, a place where God's presence is felt even in your silence. This is the mystery of your final awakening, the paradox that walking away sometimes means walking deeper into yourself. You are no longer driven to be seen or understood by everyone. You no longer strive to fill every silence or fix every awkward moment. You become content with the holy solitude that sharpens your clarity and protects your sacred frequency. You are not escaping life, you are refining it. And in this refinement, you discover that clarity is your highest currency, silence your closest friend, and divine alignment your true home. Chosen one, have you ever woken up and felt nothing? Not sadness, not joy, not loneliness, not even peace, just a soft, weightless neutrality that seems to hover in your chest like a gentle fog. It doesn't disturb you, but it doesn't ignite you either. You find yourself sitting in this bizarre middle ground where nothing feels far, yet nothing feels close. This is what some mystics call the 0-point mood, a sacred and mysterious space in your final awakening where your emotions pause as if the soul has pressed a universal reset button. Have you paused to ask yourself why you've entered this state? Could it be that God is inviting you to taste what it's like to simply exist, free from the addictive swings of emotion? In this stage, you're not numbing yourself. You're not suppressing your feelings or running from life's intensity. Instead, you're balancing the polarities that have ruled you for so long. After years, perhaps decades, of oscillating between euphoric highs and devastating lows, you arrive at this quiet plateau. It feels alien to your nervous system because there's no adrenaline rush, no spikes of excitement or waves of despair, just silent, unadorned being. Think about Ecclesiastes 3:1. To everything there is a season, and a time to every purpose under the heaven. You're entering a season not of doing or feeling, but of pure presence. Imagine the life of Nelson Mandela again. After his release from prison, he radiated a calm neutrality that wasn't empty but deeply integrated. He no longer needed emotional spikes to validate his existence. He simply embodied presence. Similarly, chosen one, you might find yourself going through a good day and feeling nothing, or facing a bad day and still feeling nothing. But this isn't suppression, it's spiritual completion. You no longer need to use emotional extremes to prove you're alive. Can you imagine the freedom in that? The ability to stand unshaken in both celebration and chaos. This sacred neutrality is where your soul finally begins to rest. You stop chasing the next emotional high. Stop fearing the next emotional low. You become the stillness behind all feelings, a vast sky untouched by passing clouds. You realize you are not the storm, nor the sunny day, but the eternal sky holding all weather patterns. In this zone, you are no longer defined by reactions, but by the silent, unwavering witness within you. Philippians 4:7 offers, "And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." This peace isn't passive, it is an active spiritual force that now sits at the center of your being. But then, something even stranger begins to unfold. Beneath this calm neutrality, you start to sense an eerie, almost electric anticipation. You wake up feeling alert, as if something monumental is about to burst into your reality. You move through your day with this unnameable expectancy, yet, day after day, nothing external actually happens. And still, that sensation lingers. Have you asked yourself what this might mean? Could it be that your spirit is preparing you not for an external event, but for an internal threshold? This is one of the final and most mystifying signs of spiritual completion, the preparation energy that feels like standing on the shore before a colossal wave, sensing its power before it even appears on the horizon. Your soul begins making room. Even when your mind can't comprehend why, you may find yourself clearing your calendar, decluttering your space, saying no to invitations, and retreating more often into silence. You may rest more, meditate longer, or spend hours doing seemingly nothing, not out of laziness or exhaustion, but because deep inside, something sacred is assembling. This is exactly what Jesus meant in Matthew 6:6 when he said, "But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father, who is unseen." You're being called into an inner sanctuary to prepare for an unseen yet undeniable shift. Look at the example of Michael Jordan in his final seasons before he would explode onto the court with legendary focus. He would go into quiet, almost meditative preparation, He wasn't waiting for the game to dictate his energy. He was gathering his inner force, creating space for a performance that was not just athletic, but transcendent. Similarly, chosen one, you are not waiting for life to activate you. You are the living activation, quietly assembling your next expression. Or consider Eckhart Tolle. Before his spontaneous awakening on a park bench, he felt an internal build-up, a sense that something vast and undefined was approaching. He didn't know what it was, only that he needed to empty himself and be present. When the moment arrived, it wasn't a gradual shift, it was a total inner threshold event that changed everything. Can you sense that same silent preparation happening in you now? During this stage, your old framework begins to dissolve without ceremony. The structures and patterns that kept your identity intact no longer hold meaning. You're not being prepared for external opportunities or dramatic plot twists. You're being prepared to embody a level of spiritual clarity that transcends intellectual understanding. This isn't about receiving sudden flashes of insight or having epic mystical visions. It is about becoming so fully integrated that the distinction between spirit and flesh collapses, and you live as pure embodiment. Galatians 2:20 says, I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. This is not metaphorical anymore. This is lived truth. You find that you're not waiting for change to arrive from outside circumstances, a new job, a relationship, a breakthrough. You realize deeply and unshakably that you are the change. You are the quiet revolution that's been forming. The still point at the center of a spinning world. You begin to understand that your role is not to seek but to anchor, not to perform but to embody. So, chosen one, can you honor this mysterious neutrality without trying to force it into excitement or productivity? Can you sit with this eerie anticipation without demanding immediate answers? Can you trust that this calm before the unseen storm is not stagnation, but the greatest preparation of your soul's journey? This is the delicate dance of your final awakening, to rest so deeply in God's presence that you become an empty vessel, ready to hold divine fullness without spilling. In this sacred stillness, you are not asleep. You are more awake than ever, listening to the divine orchestra, tuning quietly before the grand symphony begins. You are not waiting for something to happen. You are the happening. You are not preparing to cross a line. You are becoming the line itself, the threshold that others will one day recognize as living proof of divine transformation. This is your 0-point mood. This is your inner sanctuary. This is your final becoming. Beloved, chosen one, when that sacred moment finally arrives, you won't need to prepare or strategize. You won't be scrambling for the right words, the right mindset, or the perfect ritual. You will simply know. You'll look back and realize that what you once called anticipation wasn't about waiting for something to happen. It was your soul aligning, layer by layer, with divine truth. You will understand in your bones that it wasn't about bracing for a future event. It was about fully inhabiting the present moment where heaven quietly unfolded inside you. You see, you don't realize you're in your final awakening until you're already breathing inside it. And by the time it's fully integrated, the need to label or analyze the experience dissolves completely. That's the beautiful paradox of your spiritual journey. The more complete you become, the less you feel the urge to define or narrate it. These strange signs, these moments of disconnection, neutrality, or quiet grief, they aren't glitches. They are echoes of a system gracefully dismantling itself, a system that once served to keep you small, contained, and safe. Because the real you, the eternal essence chosen before the foundations of the world, was never meant to be built. It was meant to be revealed. You're not falling apart. Dear soul, you're falling open. The masks you wore to survive, the stories you repeated to be accepted, the emotional armor that once protected your tender heart, they are all gently disarming now. Not in explosive drama, but in a sacred cils surrendu, and in that holy stillness, something ancient and true begins to take its first free breath. This final awakening doesn't hand you a shiny reward or some divine trophy to display. Instead, it gifts you with a quiet, unshakable return, a return to a state of being where nothing has to be proven anymore. Nothing has to be earned, only lived and embodied. So if you're feeling strange lately, if you sense a deep loss of identity, a gentle drifting away from people, objects, and old emotions, let it happen. If you feel lost or disconnected, honor that as a sign that your spirit is in the process of sacred completion, not confusion. Trust that these sensations are not obstacles, but invitations. They are signals that you are finally stepping beyond roles and into the fullness of your divine design. Remember John 8:32, then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. You are being set free. Chosen one, free from noise, from expectations, from every false layer that ever stood between you and God. If this message resonated deeply with your soul today, I want to thank you from the depths of my heart for being here, for sharing your precious energy, and for walking this path of awakening so bravely. Your presence here is not a coincidence, it is a divine appointment. Thank you for staying until the end, for opening your heart to these sacred truths. If you feel led to support this mission and help us keep creating these messages, you can bless us through Super Thanks. And please know, whether you choose to donate or not, I am profoundly grateful for you, your love, your presence, and your silent prayers are already a gift beyond measure. I speak a blessing over you right now. May your days be filled with divine clarity and gentle courage. May your nights hold you in healing silence. May every step forward feel guided. And may every moment of solitude reveal new layers of strength within you. You are chosen, you are loved, and you are seen by heaven. If this spoke to your soul, subscribe and stay connected. Remember, the next chapter of your journey begins not when you add more noise, but when you embrace the sacred quiet that has been calling your name all along. You are not becoming lost, you are finally coming home.